What's up, guys? Illini Isaac here. Just wanted to give a quick update on David Mirkovic. We found out a few days ago that he had successful foot surgery after injuring his foot on July 31st. And originally you hear that and you're like, wow, that's doom and gloom. And it's not ideal, especially for the preseason, getting this team ramped up for the regular season. A crazy hard schedule, a lot of tough teams on the schedule. But then Jeff Goodman came out from the field of 68 and said he's expecting 6 to 8 weeks. So, okay, it's the beginning of August. That puts us sometime in October and hopefully getting ramped up by the beginning of the season, or especially when we take on Texas Tech and some of those other big teams in November and December. Again, not ideal, but 6 to 8 weeks really isn't that bad, especially considering he got surgery August 3rd, I believe, maybe August 4th. And it's going to really force the team to develop. I think it's going to really force the team to realize what they are, similar to Andre last year, where he came on strong, then kind of took a dip, and then came on strong again. The team was really forced to develop without Andre. Now, I know Merck was obviously supposed to be the focal point of this team, but then the team had kind of gelled without Andre. And then when he started to pick it up later in the season, that was just such a huge addition for the team. And I think we could see something similar with Merck if things go well, where the team really gets comfortable and then he's able to just step right in. He knows Brad's system, and again, not ideal, and you might lose a couple of those early games that you wouldn't have if Mirkovic had a healthy spring. But again, could have been much, much worse. And if the rest of the guys stay healthy and you're able to develop the rest of the guys, this is when your depth is really going to be tested. So who's going to start now? Quentin Coleman, Vaaks, Andre, Tommy, Jake Davis, or Big Z, or like who else is going to fill in that role is going to be interesting. We're going to need somebody else to step up, and Merck obviously being such a focal point of the team and getting a lot of preseason buzz. I'm sure this kind of messes things up a little bit, and the staff's going to have to adjust. But again, the most important thing would be ready for the chunk of the Big Ten season and then ready for March. 6 to 8 weeks is definitely doable. Makes me feel a lot better about the team. And Mark seems like a guy, he's going to be trying to get back. He seems to really love basketball, really love Illinois, really love playing for Brad. So it doesn't seem like a situation where he's going to milk things. And maybe it's good too for some of the freshmen to, if there's a silver lining, some of the freshmen, some of the younger guys getting some minutes. Maybe a guy like Lincoln Williams is going to get more tick now because like in the early games because Merck's going to be out. So not ideal, but 6 to 8 weeks, definitely doable. Hopefully, Fletch is able to do some magic so he can work up that foot and doesn't get re-injured or anything like that. But knock on wood, Tommy's been healthy this offseason, which is crazy because he has had some insane off seasons and mid-season injuries and sickness and things the last few years. So just want to give a quick update on Merck. That's what we're hearing. Shout out to Jeff Goodman for that update on the 6 to 8 weeks. Hopefully he's right. Make sure to stay tuned at thechampagneroom.com. We'll have you updated with Illinois basketball, Illinois football coming up soon, and most importantly, ILL.
I just wanted to say we're proud to partner with State Farm agent Brian Hansen, dedicated Illini fan. Just as we work to bring you coverage of Illinois athletics, Brian brings the same energy and commitment to serving his clients. If you're looking for a local professional who cares about the community and the orange and blue, visit brianismyguy.com today and see why so many Illini fans trust Brian Hansen and his team for their home, auto, business, and life insurance needs. This segment is also brought to you by Chiefs Naturals. Chief is proudly named after the University of Illinois mascot, and to keep him fueled, Chiefs Naturals created premium, all-natural treats with zero mystery ingredients, perfect for your dog. They are officially launching this September. Head over to chiefsnaturals.com right now and join the VIP list. You'll get exclusive email updates about the launch. You don't want to miss the first Chiefs Naturals drop. Again, that is chiefsnaturals.com. Simple ingredients, epic tail wags.
Welcome in. This is the Champagne Room live, though this is obviously pre-recorded. Some filling up the off season with some basketball and football content here. Joined by a very special guest, Bill Koch of the Providence Journal. He's got some ties to Illinois I'm going to ask him about today. So, Bill, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Appreciate the intro. I'm not that special, I promise.
Well, I was just hearing you were at the Super Bowl last year, so that's you got to be pretty cool person to be at the Super Bowl. But first off, for you, so the Providence Journal. Let's get some Providence, Illinois ties out of the way, which there aren't many, but there's been a lot of news recently with Stefan Vaaks, is what I've heard. It's now Stefan, not Stefan, comes over to Illinois.
Yep.
A lot of people had him as like a top 5-10 transfer, and now might have an even bigger role depending on when David Mirkovic comes back. So what was your experience covering Vaaks, and what can Illinois expect out of him?
Well, first thing, he came into a difficult situation at Providence, obviously. Third year of Kim English, who ultimately got fired after that season. Providence underperformed his last 2 years, and so he wasn't playing for a winner. I would imagine his experience playing for Brad Underwood in Illinois is going to be a little different. I would imagine his usage will be a little different. The restrictions on his shot selection and his decisions with the ball in his hands will be a little different. Underwood is going to be a lot more demanding than English was. But you're getting a talented player, good size, someone who can play the point, the two, could play a third guard, as a shooter on the wing. He's an older guy. He's 21 years old, going into his sophomore season. Volume shooter from three-point range. He can be very hot in some games, very cold in some others, but that's where most of his offense came from last year. Good in ball screen situations with the ball in his hands or as a pop guy with another guard. He worked a lot on that while playing as a pro in Europe. That's very much a big staple of their game. The defensive end is a work in progress. Certainly, I won't say he didn't give much effort there. I would say that he was part of a defense that was one of the worst in the history of the Big East since Ken Pom came online in the 1990s. I think it's a product of him not necessarily being a great defender, the lineup not necessarily having great defenders in it, and the coaching staff not necessarily having the answers at that end of the floor. But a talented player, still very much moldable clay early in his career, and someone who I think could be a big factor for Illinois this season.
One of Brad Underwood's big things is everyday guys that are gritty. They're going to show up every day. As far as that goes, and not to dog on a college kid by any means, but as far as showing up every day, effort, kind of gritty, like you said, it might, not that it was an effort problem on defense. He might just not have been that good of a defender. But as far as that went, in a struggling season at Providence, did you kind of learn anything about his grittiness and kind of his character on the court?
He's very much like a lot of young players in that when the ball's going in at the offensive end, everything is great. Everything is right with the world. He's in a great mood. You can see him playing to the crowd a little bit. The attitude is there. And on a couple nights where he went 0 for 8 or 1 for 11 from three, it's, the shoulders slumped and the, sort of the hangdog look, which bleeds into the rest of the game. Maybe you'll be a little loose with the ball and turn it over a couple times. Maybe you'll get beat at the defensive end and it's like, well, I'm not really scoring, so who cares about the rest? And I think a lot of that is just a maturing process for every player, because they're always used to being the best guy on offense when they're kids, and they're always used to getting an easy 30. And, it's the game's supposed to be simple. And once you get into college and you play at a high level, like in the Big East or in the Big Ten, it's much more difficult. The coaches are much more demanding. So I think Underwood's going to work with him on the mental side, certainly, while also getting his skill set better and trying to fit him in the lineup there.
Something that always does interest me is how things are left with all these transfers nowadays. We were talking before this just about how it's just crazy. Teams change every year. With Vaaks, if he were to stick around, I know they have a new coach and everything. What was his relationship with the fans? Were people really looking forward to him? What role would he have played in Providence moving forward?
I think they know he's a talented guy. So, definite starter, one of the faces of the team from a marketing standpoint going into the year. You would have been excited to see his growth from year 1 to year 2, the areas that he could improve. The already strong areas, how much better he would have been in those. So certainly a guy who they would have welcomed back with open arms. You're not necessarily surprised when anyone transfers when the coach changes. So I don't think there are any hard feelings there, or there wasn't really any big shock that he was out the door. Everyone else followed him pretty much. But definitely, you would have looked forward to seeing how different he could have been, how much more effective, more efficient he could have been in the second year in college.
Yeah, Illinois fans are stoked, and it's hard to believe college basketball is going to be back in just a few months. And
yeah,
like I said, unfortunately, we found out a few days ago that our most focal player, David Mirkovic, had foot surgery, should be back hopefully in like 8 weeks or so. But so Vaaks might be relying on him a lot. So, well, thanks for chatting about that. Now, so I'm a huge football guy. I played it in college. Illinois basketball though is like my main love, but Illinois football
Sure.
and football in general are like really what I live for. So Gabe Jacas,
yeah,
absolute stud, but second round pick for the Patriots. And there was a lot of talk going into last year. Like if he plays really well, he could be a first round pick. He had the body for it and everything. And I got a handful of questions to ask you about Gabe. But first and foremost, there's a ton of rumors on Twitter. Hard to believe what you hear, and fans are crazy. So, what from your perspective and from what kind of you've heard, what was going? Why was it so weird? Such a weird transition for him coming onto the team and now officially signing.
Yeah, he was the last non-quarterback who was unsigned, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
And it was strange. And the Patriots obviously had a lot going on at the time of the draft. Mike Vrabel was involved in a scandal, whether or not he was going to be in the draft room, not in the draft room. The Patriots had dirty hands of their own throughout that whole process. In Jacas's case, the discussions around here have mostly revolved around his health. You hear talk of a shoulder problem, a knee problem potentially, maybe an off-season surgery after his season in Illinois that the Patriots didn't necessarily either know fully about or fully approve of. Whatever that process was, it felt like there was just some miscommunication between Jacas and the teams going into the draft and then after the draft. And once you have that sort of information vacuum between the two sides, everybody starts to speculate, well, why isn't this happening? And, in media, you have a source off at that point. Jacas's agent is leaking things. The Patriots are leaking things. And, they're all sort of posturing to get the best leverage while they sign the contract. Ultimately, he's been in camp the last week or so. He's getting up to speed at this point. He's getting reps out there regularly in live periods. I've talked to a couple media members who've been up there every day who say he looks like a dude for sure. Someone who can make a major impact from a physical standpoint. How quickly he gets up to speed in the pro game, and with the scheme, that's always a question with rookies. But he passes the uniform test getting off the bus for sure.
Oh no, absolutely, all bus team for sure. But as an Illinois fan, I can definitely say he backs it up a lot of times. Even when he's not getting sacks, he's just impacting the game and taking multiple defenders. And it really does feel – I was super excited when I saw he went to the Patriots, and I know this was kind of a story amongst Illinois fans because Bielema had been with the Patriots organization a few years ago.
Right.
And him and Vrabel kind of seem like – Brett Bielema and Vrabel kind of seem like the old school football, tough, gritty type guy. So hopefully it's a good marriage. But as far as for Illinois fans and the average person that don't know the depth chart of the defense of the Patriots, what is Gabe getting into? Was this just like an absolute need the Patriots had in the draft, or are they really just looking for depth? Like what's his role and roster situation like going into his rookie year?
Yeah, I think there were 3 position groups that you were looking at coming off last season that the Patriots would have wanted to address. Wide receiver was one, offensive line was one, and edge rusher was one. And I think they look at Jacas as a guy who could play on the outside on defense. Maybe someone who could play as a defensive end or maybe someone who could play in the intermediate secondary a little bit. But he certainly fits that group from an athletic standpoint. Someone who can line up front, get to the quarterback, be disruptive in the running game. I think that's something that they realized as they got further into last season. They had a good defensive year, but you can never have too many playmakers on that side of the ball. And, I think they looked at his skill set coming out of college, his physical measurables, and thought this guy can be a factor, somebody who we can put on the edge, who can get right into the position group and get in the rotation right away.
And what was it about Jacas because in the second round, you have such good talent right there. You have tons of guys that end up, having great careers, going to the Hall of Fame. What was it, or anything you heard that you're like, man, he really clicked in like an interview, or this is what really pushed him over the line? The Patriots decided to go for it.
Well, I think you alluded to it earlier. A lot of folks coming into last year thought he had first round talent, and might have expected him to go there. And for whatever reason, he did not. I think your first round pick, you're trying to draft a guy who's going to start, or at least you project as a pretty safe starter going forward. When they took Caleb Lomu, I think they had that in mind. I think they look at Morgan Moses at right tackle and realize he's in his 30s, and they might have got fortunate with how many games he played last year, and they might not expect the same going into this year. So Lomu's a bit of a cushion for them, adds some depth at a really critical position, and gives them a younger building block at that point. I think Jacas is an upside play in the second round. I think they looked and they thought, well, he's still here at this pick. We didn't expect him to be here at this pick. So now's the time to make a move for him. Let's go. And I think a lot of that is what you alluded to earlier, just the physical measurables, the ability to impact the game, both in the passing game and in the running game. The fact that, at some point, if this had broken differently, he might have been a top 20 pick. So I think at some point you're in those draft rooms, you're sort of playing the value chart. You look at these guys and you think he shouldn't still be here. We have to take him.
With Gabe getting a little bit of a late start and, like you said, last non-quarterback to sign out of this draft class, what do you think fans are hoping to see, media's hoping to see from the preseason and then early season for Gabe?
Yeah, traditionally the Patriots don't put a ton of pressure on rookies unless they're in a position of need. The championship teams that you'd have a running joke, like the guys in the lower rounds of the draft would almost get redshirted. Like, they'd end up on IR the last week of camp and you'd say, oh yeah, what happened? He had a hangnail or something like that. And it's just sort of bed the guy in, work on his body, get him to work on the scheme, and then have him come out in year 2 and year 3 and be a little bit of a factor. In Jacas' case, he missed so much time in the offseason. He comes in behind, certainly. There are guys in front of him at that position who could get the majority of the early reps, certainly. But, this is someone who I think they'll be looking to work in as the season goes on. And from that point, Mike Vrabel's made it pretty clear through his first season here that if you perform, you will get opportunity. He doesn't strike me as a guy who plays favorites all that much. And, if Jacas is up to speed and a professional off the field and, does his homework in the playbook, I think he's a guy who has a chance to play.
A couple other Illinois guys I just kind of sparked my memory that are actually on the Patriots roster. First, we'll start with Tommy DeVito. Short time at Illinois, just a year, but kind of an Illinois legend and less of his he was insanely calm, cool, and collected on the field. Yeah. Like, felt like he never made the wrong play and was just always hitting the ball, like throwing the ball in the right spot. Obviously was just here for that 1 year, but was one of the better years of Illinois football. Now he's kind of bounced around, but found himself as a solid backup or third string option. What's his time been like with the Patriots, and kind of what's New England enjoy about having Tommy around? Because they brought him back, correct?
Yeah, he was there last year. Joshua Dobbs was the backup, a veteran guy who's been all over the place in the league, but really mature, a great sounding board for Drake May, a guy who was just in his second season. You can't put enough value on guys like Dobbs who have pretty much seen it all and gone through it all. But I think, May has sort of proven over the last season that he's going to be able to stick here and be an impact quarterback throughout the league. Getting them to the Super Bowl in his second season was really impressive. And, so maybe I think they took that as an invitation to sort of switch up the quarterback room a little bit. And DeVito's had experience starting with the Giants, obviously playing high-level college football at Illinois. He's a guy who should fit the region. Foxborough is about a 25-minute drive from Providence, which has a large Italian section on Federal Hill. So Tommy DeVito will be welcome there with open arms for sure. Tommy Cutlets with the Giants, obviously, sort of made his mark there. But you watch the guy in pregame and you just see the physical skills. I mean, he just throws the ball beautifully, and you could imagine him coming in a pinch and directing an offense and getting it down the field. He's a guy who he'll hang around in the league for a long time if he has his head screwed on straight, because from a physical perspective, the talent is there and obvious.
One last Illini, Tanner Arkin, and I know it's early. There's a ton of guys around Patriots camp and obviously with rookie camp earlier in the spring and everything. But I saw on Twitter the other day that he was getting first team reps with like some position tight end or H-back or something like that. So I don't know if you've heard anything about Tanner Arkin. Awesome blocker at Illinois. Didn't catch a ton of balls or anything, but I know the coaches raved about him. But anything you've heard about Arkin?
Well, that's a position that you can make some inroads with the Patriots. Obviously, Hunter Henry is further along in his career. He's in his early 30s, a good veteran, but at some point you might want to manage his snap count a little bit over the course of the season. They drafted Eli Raritan out of Notre Dame, who was a top 50 national recruit in his class. Very gifted guy. His production didn't necessarily match it in college, but he's sort of like Jacas, one of those guys who you look at and say, this guy passes a uniform test. Let's give him a shot. But in Arkin's case, that's a position group that, the Patriots didn't really get a ton of production from last year. They brought in receivers, obviously, with Brown and Dobbs and paid them significant money, or allocated significant money on the salary cap to them. So you would imagine they want to get a little more dangerous down the field. That could open up some spots underneath for some tight end production. Like I said, I don't know if Henry's going to be out there all 17 games trying to catch 80 balls. I don't necessarily know if that's what they see for him. They probably just want him to play, be healthy into January to be a factor if they go back to the playoffs. And so that might give a chance for some younger options at that position to get on the field early and see what they can do.
This is more of a selfish question as somebody who keeps up with the NFL. What are you expecting from the Patriots? I feel like a year of regression is what a lot of people expect from a team after they go to the Super Bowl and overperform a lot of times. So it seems to be like that's the easy cop out of like, oh, that's what's going to happen to the Patriots. But how do people in Foxborough feel, and sort of what's your vibe with the team going into this next season?
Well, the fans are energized, obviously, because it was so difficult the last year of Belichick and the 1 year of Gerard Mayo. You thought, geez, they've just fallen off the cliff here. Without Brady, without Belichick, the dynasty is over. And to have Vrabel come back, a guy who played here, obviously won Super Bowls here, and may just blossom in year two. Whenever you have coach quarterback, you feel like you have a chance. Statistically, the Super Bowl hangover thing is real. If you go back 20, 25 years, those teams who have lost the Super Bowl the next year certainly have regressed in terms of their record. They play a much more difficult schedule this year. They've got the AFC West and the NFC West. And they're also playing a first-place team schedule now that they won the AFC East last year. So much different, much more difficult. But even if they don't go 14-3, let's say they go 11-6, they'll still find themselves in January with a chance to compete. And, Bill Parcells always used to say, just get in the tournament and give yourselves a shot. So I think the fans are bullish on the team for sure. The media naturally is going to be a little more skeptical. But I think that league is all about coach quarterback. And I think if coming out of last season, the primary takeaway for me is that you have a capable coach and you have a quarterback who can play to the Super Bowl, who is young in his career and is only going to get better. So those are the building blocks every team seeks, and I think the Patriots have them in place.
Yeah, it also helps when you have the Dolphins and the Jets in your division. That's an easy few wins to help you get into the playoffs.
I was going to be nice to everyone else in the division, but now they're out here catching strays from you. Well done.
Yeah.
Well
done. The Jets, who knows if Geno Smith works out, and I think the Dolphins are just playing for a quarterback next year. But cool. Well, Bill, this has been awesome. Super insightful stuff, and yeah, it's been great to get your insight. And as college fans, like I think a lot of times we tend to gravitate towards the teams that our players get drafted to. So it's always nice to like I just can't know all the details about the Patriots, because I'm keeping up with Illinois and other things. So it's good to get the insight about Gabe and some of these other guys. So yeah, feel free to let us know. You said you're going to camp maybe next week. Like, what do you got coming up? Where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, providencejournal.com. I'm on X and Instagram at BillKoch25. And generally do a lot of college basketball, a lot of high schools here, Patriots. We'll get involved with the Red Sox if they make a playoff run here. I've been at the Journal for, in October to be 14, 15 years. I'd have to do the math. 12 years? 2014, 12 years. This is why we have statisticians, because trying to do that off not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been in sports media in the state for a while and gotten a chance to see a lot of cool things and really enjoy what I do, and I just hope that comes through in my work.
No, absolutely, and we got a lot of baseball fans in Central Illinois. So go check out Bill's stuff. And one thing I like to always ask: do the Patriots have like a saying? Like the Chargers is like bolt up, Illinois is ILLINI. What do the Patriots say?
Yeah, when Belichick was here, it was do your job.
Do your job. Okay.
Just keep it simple. Do your job. He had a bunch of other ones, but that was the one that ended up on the branding and the marketing and everything else. Currently with Vrabel, I'm not necessarily certain that there are any that are that sort of at the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
But Belichick's was always do your job.
Did you have fans like saying that to each other, like in the crowd? Like, do
All
your
the
job.
Oh,
Interesting. Okay.
At times it'd be ridiculous. You'd be out with your friends and they'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
go get us a beer, do your job. Like that sort of thing.
Funny.
It's like, okay, guys, like this might have jumped the shark a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's tone it down.
Fun fact, I'm pretty sure last thing, I think Bielema because Bielema always says tough, smart, dependable. And there's a few other things he says that I'm pretty sure he got from Belichick, or at least like twisted something from Belichick. So, but I love the do your job is just such a good football thing. But awesome. Well, thanks so much, Bill, again, and appreciate it. Have a good rest of your week and do your job, I guess.
Thanks for having me on anytime.